Audio Jungle.
Good morning. I've given a lot of presentations in my time, but none half as cool as this. So, like you said earlier, Jess, I hope you all know just how lucky you are to be here. So, I guess we have to go way back to the beginning with my story. And the good thing about a presentation like this is I can't get anything wrong. There's not going to be any difficult questions because it's just my life by my design. And that's something that you should all start to think about too, that there's no wrong choices in what you want to do in your career and your subjects, but do what you like, and then you can't do anything wrong. So I guess I'll start where I'm from. I'm from the Wild West, Mayo to be exact, where I spent my formative years playing equal amounts with Matchbox cars and Barbie dolls. I have a brother very close in age to me, and there was never any differentiation at home. We grew up on a farm, and if you were 2 arms and 2 legs, you would stand in a gap at the drop of a command. So really, it was kind of confusing by the time I got to school when they started to teach us different things, girls to different subjects, to boys. And I was like, this doesn't really add up to the story at home. What's going on? And one day in primary school, the girls used to be made do knitting and sewing at a certain point in the afternoon, and the boys went out and practiced football. And in my head, this is not on. This is like, they're having loads of fun, and we're doing knitting and sewing. So I organized a strike. And we got into trouble, and the rest of the girls caved, but I stuck to my guns, and Mom was brought into school, and she was like, okay, she's disruptive, okay, sorry about that, but what did she do? And she's like, well, you know, she wouldn't do what she was supposed to do. She didn't do knitting and sewing. And my mom was kind of like, but don't you think she had a point? You know? So anyway, she was dead chuffed. And that was primary school. Then we went into secondary school. And it was different again. Because I'd been in a girl and boys school, and then suddenly off I was into an all-girls environment. Alien. 600 girls in one building. That's crazy. No one should do that. Basically, you go into the secondary school environment and you're given, again, prescribed subjects, which when you go and you talk to your friends outside of school, they're like, oh, I'm doing economics. And I was like, what's economics? We don't even hear about that. So just because I was a bit stubborn and obstinate, I was like, well, I want to do subjects that the boys can do. So I picked subjects that I liked, but also subjects that I thought would be useful. So I liked drawing, I did art. I liked geography. When I was a child, my dad he likes to take long spins, and my task would be the navigator. So I'd be handed the map. I learned 2 things: how to read the map, how to fold the map properly, always. But this map was so well worn, you'd hold it up, it was like a paper doily at the end of the day. And I didn't realize then, but that actually was the beginning of my career. I loved looking at maps. I loved the design of them. I loved the information that came from them. And that was basically how it all started. So I picked geography, and I did maths, and I did physics. And I hadn't a clue how they all added up, or what was even the link between them. But this is pre-internet as well. I know I sound really, really old. But we used to get prospectuses in paper format for the universities. And I was looking through the prospectus, and I found this. So, marine science. It looked cool. It all looked very exotic. And they did this subject called oceanography, and that combined maths and physics, and there was lots of pretty pictures. So I said, sign me up, because the guidance counselor offered me options of nursing and teaching, and I said, no, thank you. So when I went into marine science, I thought I'd be doing great research, scuba diving in hot places with cool machines and everything. And what I really ended up doing was walking around in the cold on beaches in the west coast of Ireland. And that was freezing. So then I said, so what can I do that's indoors and that's nice, but it's also marine science? And that is when I realized it's all about the data. So in marine science, as in any science, you end up working with data. People are collecting it lots of different ways. You collect it using research vessels, and you collect it with little sensors attached to animals, and they go out, and not only do you follow where they go, but you also collect the information they're getting on their sensors, like the temperature of the water they're in, and their route, and their habitats, and everything. So this was really cool, and I ended up going into the Marine Institute, where I got an internship there, and I was using all this data and looking at it all together, and they said, well, can you put it all on a map? And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, no, I love maps, let's do that. So they had this cool software called GIS. What is GIS? It's Geographic Information Systems. It's basically digital map making, for want of a better, easier description. And I got to play around with this for quite some time when I was doing my internship. And I said, that's it, I want more of this. I want to figure out exactly what else you can do with it. So I did a master's in that. So GIS is not just about data you collect on the ground and you go out in a research vessel. It also involves collecting data from space. So I got to use satellite data. Remote sensing is collecting information remotely. So whether it's a satellite or an airplane or a drone, all of these are ways of creating data. And all that data is layered up together if it's in the right place, and you can look at it over time and see how things change, and then model that into the future to see exactly what's going to happen. So as you can imagine, this is very useful for situations like climate change, etc. I have been able to travel the world with these skills and working with data, essentially. I have been to Australia, where my friends were picking zucchinis, which we know are courgettes, not zucchinis, and they were making, like, I don't know, $6 an hour and living in a hostel with a dorm room with no windows, whereas I was sitting in a nice office, making lots of maps, having a great time, saving my money, and then spending the rest of the time on the beach. I came back from Australia, and I kind of didn't really want to just get back into a boring old job, so I ended up getting a job with the United Nations Environment Programme in Cambridge, which allowed me to travel the world. I have worked in Cambridge with the UN, I have worked with the European Space Agency, with NASA, with space companies that use data to look at, well, a lot of it is surveillance over the Middle East, but we'll gloss over that. They also use it for environment and all sorts of decision making. As part of that, I have been able to go and collect information on important habitats, and those habitats are basically areas in the world that they need to understand the problems in. So you saw a picture earlier about the wildfires in Australia. Other examples are mangroves, which are big marine trees, basically. And when people cut them down, they lose all their storm defenses, the animals have nowhere to live. It's basically an ecological disaster. So to avoid that, people like me get to go out and climb up mangroves in nice places like Costa Rica. And then they go to not-so-great mangroves in Cameroon, where the people there live on these areas, cut down all the trees, they have nowhere to leave any of their litter, because basically they're living off nothing, and all the environment is dying around them. And the biodiversity is also being impacted. But there are lots of initiatives everywhere. This is a turtle sanctuary in Reunion, where I got to go to talk about coral reefs and all sorts of nice things, along with some time on the beach. So they really care about turtles in some places in the world, and they understand how important they are. This is in Miami. This is another turtle example, and they have it looks like a crime scene, but it's not. It's to prevent a crime. It's to prevent the turtles dying. And then let's go to China. In China, turtles are very different. They're basically takeaway. I was looking at this menu when I was in this restaurant, when I was in a meeting. I was like, well, that looks kind of funny. That's not a pepper. That's a turtle covered in sauce. So it's important that we have the data that everybody in the world, no matter if you're in China or elsewhere, understands that these habitats and these creatures need to be managed and not eaten. So one of the other things I've been able to do, which is really cool, is work with global organizations. This is the International Charter of Space and Major Disasters. It's basically all the space agencies in the world. They, in times of disaster, they will task all their satellites, and they all agree to collect all the data. So like in Haiti, when that earthquake, they all sent their satellites over to collect all the data. And then they take the data and they make maps using all of the imagery in there. So it can be cyclones, earthquakes, fires, all sorts. In Ireland, it's usually flooding. It rains a lot here. You all know that. But basically, this is an emergency map made for agencies in Ireland by disaster and space agencies. So I've been talking on and on about all the stuff I've done, but the reason we do all this is the world is rapidly changing, and we do really need to impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. And a lot of that is to provide the data to the decision makers that actually can create policy that will do that. So digital, where am I now? I'm working in an engineering company, because as you've heard, I'm not an engineer. I'm a scientist, mostly data person, data geek. What the stuff we do there, machine learning, basically, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So you tell a computer that over and over again, and it learns. Now, if we could just do that with all the boys, wouldn't it be great? Data analytics, visualizing information in a useful way. Like, a lot of this stuff here is like, you'd usually see it on an Excel chart, but because they've used colors and different sizes for the bubbles, you can see that there is some medicine and some cures that are actually worthwhile, and some, like vitamin C, questionable. Why would you bother? So in digital and engineering and STEM, we solve problems. We're using data to impact on people's lives by creating new and better transport infrastructure. We use that to look at a whole national network here and look at things like risk zones and for accidents and how to manage that better. We ask questions. We ask questions, and we ask questions so that we can come up with solutions. And this is exactly what we're doing. We're looking at all sorts of data brought from all around our company, layering it all together in order to create some sort of analysis. And the analysis will look at a pattern and see where are the trends. No 2 days are the same in an engineering company. Some days you get to go and work with your clients, and you go off on site, you chat about all sorts of things. And some days you're sitting at your desk answering lots of emails and Skype calls all day. But it's important to do all of these different things. And really, STEM is it's probably the most rewarding career from my point of view, being able to impact on the environment and other people's lives. So don't forget, STEM is for girls. So I really hope a lot of you can remember some of this next week. But if not, just think about the turtles. Thanks.
Thank you.